Well, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Happy Earth Day. It is April 22nd, and I am once again delighted to be back here with you, Aida, on this fourth episode, right? Did I get that right? Fourth
Correct,
episode
correct.
celebrating sustainability. How are you?
Great, great. Yeah, likewise. It's always good to be talking wine with you. I don't know about you all, but I always learn a thousand things when I talk to Amanda about wine. And I feel like today might be our most practical episode of all the episodes we're doing this month because
Yeah.
we're going to arm you with the info to actually go out and buy sustainable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, today is all about the certifications, the logos, and how to find them. So not only what to look for as far as the actual certification logos, but also what websites to use to check and what verbiage to use if you're out in the wild doing your thing, talking to sommeliers, talking to wine friends, and you want to talk sustainability and look for the signs to let you know that
Yeah.
a winery is practicing sustainability. That is what we're going to arm you with today. So just to recap a little bit, since we've talked so much about all things sustainability and the ever encompassing, ever changing, evolving world that that entails, let's recap Aida once more with the three E's of sustainability and what that means.
Yeah, so I actually pulled a quote today from the California Wines website in order to just kind of put this in perspective. So, one of the participant members, somebody who's been certified, said sustainable wine growing certification supports our belief that growing the highest quality grapes and crafting delicious wines can only be achieved by taking care of the land and our people. And so, that's just a reminder that that's the objective here. And those three E's Amanda's talking about, just to remind you, you're just going to like have them jumping through your brain in your sleep by the end of the
Yep.
series. But in case you can't, just need a reminder, it's to be environmentally sound, to be socially equitable, and to be economically viable in all the practices that you're doing. So the economics, the environment, and, just really looking at it again, we're going to keep saying this, looking at the whole picture, looking at it holistically, however you want to say it.
Yeah, broad lens. That's what we love. We love to keep everyone and everything in mind. It's not just about the land, it's about the people that inhabit it as well. So, sustainability has been the topic of conversation as of late. We've talked with some, or talked about some really great wines that represent all that entails. We've talked about organic, we've talked about biodynamic, and we've talked about how that intersects with sustainable. Today, we've got three wines to talk about, and in no particular order, other than the order that I'd probably most likely drink them in. We're going to be starting with the Gary Farrell Sonoma County. There's actually Russian River Olivet Vineyard Chardonnay. So this is a teeny tiny production Chardonnay, and I don't know, Aida, have you ever had this one before?
I don't think I've had this exact Olivet Vineyard. Actually, I was thinking about this morning, but I have definitely been to Gary Farrell and have had the whole experience there. And I do have to say a little tidbit that I realized Amanda probably already knows this, but the Olivet Vineyard was actually planted in 1975. So not only is it old vine, but also only 500 acres of Chardonnay were planted in California at the time, which just like is such a contrast to where we are today with
Yeah.
Chardonnay in California. So it's definitely like one of those firsts out there. So we have Gary Farrell, which is definitely worth, I mean, actually, all three of these wineries have beautiful tasting rooms, by the way. I just have to say,
It's very
definitely worth
true.
a visit when we're all going in real life for tasting. So, yes, the Gary Farrell. And then, which is next, Amanda?
Well, I would go to actually have these in reverse order. I would actually go to the Raymond next, only because it is 1 year older. So I would give this maybe I'd give the Dow just a few more moments in glass. But the Raymond 2018 Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon is not only certified sustainable, but it is also certified biodynamic. And that is, of course, if you've ever come into contact, and you of course would remember if you did, with Jean-Charles Boisset, the proprietor of Raymond, and that very, very fun electric, memorable tasting room winery experience. I won't give you the details because if you haven't been there, then it's like such a fun surprise. But you can definitely check it out on Instagram because they're such fun and they really have such a great spirit when it comes to hospitality. But more than that, the wines really speak for themselves. They're wines that are very serious, but they themselves don't take themselves too seriously as a team and as a hospitality group. So what I love about the Raymond, of course, it's Napa Valley. It's coming from they're located in Rutherford, right in the center of it. I actually think they just got their own road to like get
Oh,
right up in there off of Highway
okay.
29.
Rainy
Um,
Road.
it also, like, in like QVC fashion, has a velvet label, which
I
I always
know.
think is super fun. But
Very fancy.
they really are progressive in all things farming, sustainability, winemaking. And I've always really appreciated that about them. And then the last one I really wanted to include because I feel like this is such a fan favorite, and not that the other two aren't, but I would be remiss not to include Daou from Paso. And I think
Yeah.
anytime I talk to someone, especially around my parts that I grew up in Pennsylvania, this is such a beloved brand. In fact, my brother-in-law's father loves Daou, and anytime we were talking about wine, he's like, "Have you had Daou recently? I just love that wine so much." And I was like, this is such a great opportunity to include them because I think people see Daou as such a household name. They see it as, a wine that they love. They can order it out at the restaurant. They can grab it on
Yeah.
the shelves of retail store. But little do they know they are SIP certified, so
Yeah.
sustainability in practice. So they're also doing all the right things. So I really wanted to make sure we were well covered in that way. And certainly as we head into our fifth week next week, we'll be sort of bookending that with other wines that are really easy to find that are maybe
Yeah.
just slightly lower in price because these are not inexpensive wines. These are, venturing up and, past the $50 mark for most
Yeah.
of these. So we wanted to keep that in mind. So where do you want to start today? Because we have a few different certifications to cover. Of course,
Yeah.
the California certification, the CSWA. We also have SIP. We also have Lodi rules. Where do you want to
Here's
begin?
my thought is I was
Okay.
having a conversation with one of my friends recently about who has been watching our Facebook Live. So thank you for watching them.
Hello.
Um, but one of the things we were talking about is just kind of like how do you narrow down into the subject so that you feel confident when you go out into the world and are looking for sustainable wines. So we gave you the definition. You know what that's all about. I think we should say, Amanda, that, as we've said in the past weeks, like both organic and biodynamic are part of the conversation here as well. But we're going to focus more specifically on sustainability. But, even some of these wines today are organic and biodynamic, and we'll get into
Hmm.
that. But I think that Amanda and I were talking yesterday, and we were saying, the easiest thing to look for is obviously a logo. Like if somebody has gone through certification process and they have a logo, let's go there. And so we are with California Wines, and they are connected to the California Sustainable Wine Alliance, who has their own certification. So I feel like that's the easiest one for us to start with, which is the
Yes.
CCSW. So, right,
Yes.
I'm going to just hold up one of the CCSW labels so that you can see that is what you're looking for on
And Aida, you've
a
got the
label.
Cambria, which we talked about in week one.
Yes,
So if you haven't watched this whole series, that's a great wine to go back to and
yes,
explore. That's Julia's Vineyard that you've got there, 2018 Pinot, certified on the label. So the wine itself is actually is certified. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up how one might find that certification
great.
to see in ahead of time if that's something that you would maybe want to find in stores. So I'm going to pull up the California Sustainable Wine website in just a moment because this is always my favorite part when technology and I have a really great conversation
And while
amongst
Amanda's doing,
ourselves.
I'll just kind of remind you that there's actually two main websites we've been talking about here. So there is discovercaliforniawines.com, which gives you a broader view of all things California wines. And they have a very
That's this.
comprehensive sustainable wine growing page, not even page, portion of the site, multiple pages. But California Sustainable Wines, is it, sorry, with an S, right? I don't want to misspeak. It's California Sustainable Wines.com, not wine, right?
It's actually wine.com. So
Okay,
it's
great.
California
So
Sustainable Wine.com and Discover
thank you.
California Wines.com.
Wines.com. So just making sure we get our plurals and our singulars
Yes.
correct. So California Sustainable Wine.com. Amanda and I were so excited when we saw the team launch this because
Yes.
right there at the top it says find. It's just so
Isn't this
easy.
amazing? I
So
love
user
it.
friendly.
Yeah, and you can see at the top here where I'm circling, this is the logo that, of course, you'd be looking for in the back of the wine. And as we go through this conversation, of course, what we want you to keep in mind is that not every wine is going to have that logo, even if it's, one, practicing sustainability and two, certified. There's just, not everyone is up to date as far as getting the logos actually on there. So one of the best ways to do that is, like Aida said, on this wonderful website that we're so excited about, you're going to go ahead and click find. And as we scroll down, you can either search by winery name. So let's start with our white. So maybe we'll type in Gary Farrell. Oh, I can't spell. There we go.
And
And
I
we'll hit
really think that I'm just going to say, Amanda, that I do think that people who don't work in industries where you need to put a label on things, like in retail for the most part, don't realize it actually takes an extremely long time to change labels in these
yes,
industries. So
yes,
to Amanda's point, like just to reiterate, like if the label doesn't have it, doesn't mean they're not doing it. And so doing this extra step, I think is really, really worth your time.
yes. So I just typed in Gary Farrell. Obviously, there's a few different things that came up, and you'll see in these sort of gray italicized, you'll see winery and wine. So the winery itself, Gary Farrell, meaning the production facilities are certified sustainable. And as we have talked about throughout the course of this process, um, you've got two different essentially parts that we're talking about when it comes to wine growing and winemaking. One would be the vineyard that could be certified sustainable. One would be the winery. And at times, of course, you'll have both of those together be cohesive. But someone like Gary Farrell and several other wineries, in fact, they don't always own their own land. A lot of times they are purchasing fruit, or maybe they're stewards of the land, so they're not certifying it in the same way that the winery would be certified. So that's the distinction there. So, like for example, the one where it says wine Biendecito Pinot Noir, that means the wine itself is certified sustainable, meaning the wine in the bottle as well as the winemaking facilities, that was all certified. But the winery itself, Gary Farrell, is certified sustainable in Sonoma, and you can see a few others here as well. So that just sort of breaks down how you can find that. Of course, you can search, lots of different filters here to like find what exactly you're looking for in terms of like region, county, variety. So if you were like, I'm planning an Earth Day celebration and I want to have a party and I only want, Sonoma County Chardonnay, well, then that's certified sustainable. Then you could filter down that
Yeah.
way, which is really, really awesome and a great new
So
feature that they've added.
useful,
Yep,
especially if you're purchasing wine online, then you can just reference this. And if you're like my father, who likes to still go talk to his, wine merchant in person, there was a download list on that link as well. So you could even like print them out if you wanted to take them with you.
for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, looking on the label is obviously going to be like place number one. Going to CaliforniaSustainableWine.com is going to be a good option. And then, of course, just like looking at all the marketing materials is going to
Yes.
be a big piece. And so we're not just talking about the label, we're talking about their website. We're talking about like, any other materials you may come across. If you're a wine club member and you get your shipment, there's probably information on there. Like they want to convey this to you and make it easy. And as a
Yes.
reminder, being that California is a global leader in sustainability and over 80% of our wines are made in a sustainable fashion, like you're more likely than not to be stumbling across a sustainable wine. But this is
Yes.
going to ensure that you know what kind of certification, what kind of path they're on, because it's a continuous path.
Yes. And there's also beyond that certification that we just talked about, there's also a few other
Yes.
recognized certifications throughout the state of California. One, of course, is going to be one that Daou has, which is going to be the SIP, Sustainability in Practice. Again, that's not located on their label, but it is on their website. So if you wanted to just go check to see like, hey, oh, they're SIP certified, that is a recognized sustainable certification in the state of California in line with California wines. And then the other one is going to be Lodi Rules. So I don't know if you'll be able to see
Yeah.
it on the
I think we
back
both
here.
have, yeah, right.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, you'll be able to see yours better. So that's Lodi Rules. Obviously, this is, coming from Lodi in California. So when we had the Lang twins a couple weeks ago, they are certified Lodi Rules. So if you see
This isn't
those on the
actually the wine
label,
we had, but it's another
yes.
delicious wine by Lang Twins. We had the
Yeah,
Alianico Rosé, but here's their multiple chano.
exactly.
And I
So
think
yeah,
one
so
of
if,
the things to
if you
keep in
see
mind
those,
there with Lodi rules, like, sorry, Amanda, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say that, you might be wondering, like, why are we pointing to a specific corner of the state's certification? And it's because over a fifth of California's grapes are grown in the Lodi AVA. So it's really just putting that in perspective, that even these local certifications can mean a lot in terms of the volume of grapes that are actually, volume of wines, volume of wineries, like all those things there are a lot of over in Lodi. So yeah, that's another certification to look for. We talked about SIP. And then, of course, you could be looking for the certifications that refer to the other programs, right? So
Right.
we had Bara has the organic certification. I believe
Mm-hmm.
they had CCOF, right? The
Yep.
California
Yep.
certification. And then some of these wines, like today, we have a biodynamic certified wine, but it doesn't
Yep.
have that label on there. So yeah, just looking for any of those. And then Amanda, I think we were also saying just looking for terms, right? In
Yeah.
marketing
So
materials.
yeah, I mean, I think like, I don't know if you've got the Chardonnay in front of you. I
Yes.
have definitely been like, sipping on this bright, delicious Russian River Valley Chardonnay, um, which is just, quintessentially Sonoma Russian River. It's just so
Yes.
beautiful and lifted and bright, and
So much
but it
like
has,
almost like Meyer lemony, like just
yeah,
California in the late winter to me. Like all of our farmers markets
yes.
are in this glass.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect description. If I were someone that was in a retail store and on the floor, or excuse me, at a restaurant, and I were, I'm looking for a delicious, Russian River Valley Chardonnay, maybe a single vineyard, maybe it's not, but I really want something that really takes into consideration all of the things that go into sustainability. So what would you ask someone, be it a sommelier or retail person about, or even if you're visiting the winery? What would
Mhm.
you ask that person? And I think some of the things, the key terminologies that we would suggest that you use are, are they paying attention to how much water usage that they use at the winery? Are they paying attention to, their carbon footprint in general? So are they looking at things like how heavy their glass is? Are they looking at whether or not they're making, more than necessary trips, with trucks back and forth? I loved Honig. I don't know if we talked about it,
Right.
but when I was talking with Stephanie Honig, they had a quick conversation. She was like, this is so silly. These trucks are coming in and out and they're making so many trips. There's no reason that we need to be having this many trips to the winery. Why don't we just condense everything into one or two throughout the week? So
Mhm.
places like that. And then, looking at your employees, do they have, housing? Are they being taken care of from properly from like a, benefits perspective? Are they just well taken care of, and do they have tenure? Of course, I think that's one of the
Yeah.
great things that we can look for, like how long have your employees
Yeah.
worked for you, because that can tell a lot about a winery. What are some things that
And
you
that
might
that
that you might
reminds me actually
suggest?
back, yeah, and that actually reminds me back of like the Bar F story, right? Where the winemaker and I believe also the vineyard manager, right, have been there like decades and decades. And you're just like,
Exactly.
that's definitely a testament to the employment practices. So I think it's just all of these terms, what we're trying to address are not only those three E's we were talking about earlier. So, the economics, the environment, and being socially equitable, but also just a reminder, in our first episode, we talked about like the actual 8 key areas that we look at here in California for sustainability. So I'm just going to list them off because questions related to any of these terms, in my opinion, are fair game.
Yes.
So they are water efficiency, like Amanda was saying, energy efficiency. So maybe asking questions about solar panels of some of the wineries we've talked about up to this point, pest management and wildlife habitat, which, we talked a lot about with throughout even last week with the animals episode, but just, asking questions like how much of the acreage you have is actually planted versus being used for wildlife habitats,
Hmm.
those kind of things. And then
Do
of
you
course,
have bees
soil
on the
health.
property? Do you have owls, things like that?
Yeah, sheep, all the Highland cattle we were looking at last week. And then soil health and waste management. And again, the soil health can kind of come back to, we were saying that Honig uses sniffer dogs, and they're trying to do another approach to soil health, which is not use pesticides as much, which ultimately increases the soil health, right? Though that's
Yep.
an option there. And then a big piece for me, I loved your I loved when you pointed out supply chain things, because I think we forget about that. Like you were saying,
Yeah.
lighter weight glass bottles. And then for me, being from a teeny small beach town in California, community involvement is super important
Yeah.
to us. I remember there's a huge global surf brand that is from my hometown, and the amount of like beach cleanups and things like that they would do. Well, we're seeing that happen with a lot of these wineries. And so whatever of those matter most to you, like maybe hold it close to your heart. And then when you go out shopping, when you go out on the internet, virtual or in real life or into a restaurant, kind of keep these things in mind. And also, not everybody is going to have all the answers. So, just you don't need to overwhelm the person you're buying the wine from. They may not know the whole backstory of every single glass that they're pouring. That's okay. But I think this is just one of those things that I think we're all talking about a lot during sustainability conversations, Earth Day, any of this green movement that we're in right now, is a lot of this is up to us as consumers to not only vote with our dollars, but we have to take that extra step and kind of dig down a little bit deeper. And I don't know about you, Amanda, but I'm such a kinetic, I'm such like a physical learner. So for me, visiting the winery, being able to
Yeah.
talk to people there, that's, or of course, having a great tasting that I'm being led through. I'm going to remember that a lot more than if I just like am pulling a wine off the shelf, unless I've had a great conversation. If I'm just
Yes.
pulling a wine off the shelf at a store, I'm just not going to, it's not going to stick with me.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, we've talked about it in other conversations before. For me, living in Napa Valley was everything and how I learned and really getting that to sink into my bones in a way that I knew what questions to ask because I was living it and I was breathing it. I think that's sort of what we're trying to arm you all with today is really giving you not only the language to use, but also, the overarching understanding of what's happening and more importantly, why. So, as much as I love getting questions as a somebody like, is this wine organic? Is this wine biodynamic? I think for me, I'd love to hear more questions. And I think I personally ask a lot of questions when I'm out visiting wineries, but I think some of these other questions are are not only relevant in some ways, they should be adjacent to, in addition to asking, is this sustainable? Is it biodynamic? Is it organic? Specifically, what are they doing? And
Yeah.
I think, going back to certifications, whether or not a winery is certified or not, for whatever reason, just knowing that they're on that trajectory and sort of
Yes.
reinforcing that and letting them know by asking questions and letting them know by, as you said, voting with your dollars, that this is important to you. This propels us forward. This is what gets us to a place where more than 80%, we get to
Yeah.
100% of
Hmm.
California wines being sort of made in a certified sustainable winery, which is really, really exciting.
And I would love to add something I'm not sure we've quite talked about, which is specifically when you're looking at the SIP certification. I don't know, maybe Amanda can talk to Lodi rules. I don't know the exact numbers behind it. But when you're looking at the CCSW, so the main certification we were talking about, that Cambria has, and then the SIP certification that Daou has, both of these are a Amanda, you can probably say this more eloquently than I, but basically both of these are people trying to kind of come over a common denominator in the sense that there are anywhere from 50 on the SIP certification. There's 50 regulations, 50 things that people are trying to accomplish. And there's over 200 in the California Sustainable Wine Association CCSW certification. And neither of these, it's not better or worse that they have 50 measures or 200 measures they have to pass. But in both instances, they have to have essentially like a passing grade of above 75 to 80% of those measures met. And the reason that is the case, you might be saying to yourself, like, no, they should be meeting 50 out of 50 and 200 out of 200. But it's taking into account the reality of things we've talked about already. If you're a smaller family owned winery, maybe you can't afford the economics. If you, like Gary Farrell, are getting grapes from elsewhere, you might not have the whole supply chain under your command. So knowing that people are doing the most good most of the time with as much of their effort as they can, that's what we're talking about. And that's why, to Amanda's point, just asking these questions of like, yes, no, black or white, it is or isn't organic, it is or isn't sustainable, is not
Right.
really going to get you to the place that's really going to tell you the real story of what's going on. Fair
Yeah,
to say?
yeah, totally fair. I think about it in the way that we think about our own lifestyles. If you want turn yourself around and have a healthier lifestyle. Well, it's not going to happen overnight. The big changes require small changes. It's little things here and there that become the most sticky in your life. And the same can be said for moving towards sustainability. If we could just paint a brush across the landscape and turn everyone sustainable, that would be great, but that's not possible. Nor do I think is it encouraged, because these are practices that are intended to take a long time.
Yeah.
We're talking about soil, we're talking about the environment. I mean, it's a slow changing evolution, which is why I think, again, it's so important that we reiterate to the wineries and to the people who are making those decisions the importance that we take when we're deciding which wines to purchase, that it
Yeah.
means something to us. So because it is a slow climb, I do think that sort of, hearing that over and over is really helpful, and people, I would be excited if someone was like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, that's awesome! I'm gonna keep doing it."
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
this reminds me a lot of our mutual friend Casey, who comes from a farming family here in California. And one of the things that it's so obvious, as somebody who, is a like lover of plants and gardening and all those things. I know this, but I don't always remember when it comes to agriculture and the wine I'm drinking, which is most of these products take years to grow. In the
yes.
case of wine, years to get your first yield. Obviously, grapes are harvested on an annual basis. However, you need to look, like, just simply for the economics, you need to look generations down the road in order to have your business even be viable. So if that's that long tail look you're looking at things with, then to Amanda's point, it only is natural that the practices you're putting in place, the effort you're doing, is not just for today in order to accomplish it tomorrow, which, not to get too philosophical, but as you know, one of our problems as Americans, that we like want instant gratification. And this is a time when we're actually talking about, if we look 2, 3, 5, 20 years down the road, or we're actually in the 10th anniversary of Down to Earth Month. So if you look back 10 years where California was compared to where it is today, we're
Hmm.
eons. And I mean, 2011 doesn't seem that long ago, but we are so far down the path compared to where we were. So it's a silver lining on this Earth Day. It's like something to celebrate.
It is definitely something to celebrate, and I think it speaks to California's commitment that we've gotten this far this quickly in 10 years. So, kudos to California. It's very, very
Yeah.
exciting. I would be remiss not to drink the two other
I
wines
was just
here.
going to say, we should try these wines. We've been talking a lot. Okay. So
Um,
Gary Farrell, I actually have not been sipping actively. So let me.
oh, good. Yeah, take a sip because it's delicious. I had such a great time talking about Russian River Valley as a region over on my
Uh,
own YouTube
and
channel.
it's so
I think it was
beautiful.
in February, March. And it's just such a diverse region. I think, people think of Russian River as one thing, but they have what's called the neighborhoods, and there's different microclimates, that exist. I think six of them.
Okay.
But this is, to me, it is quintessential Russian River. It is what we think of when we think of Russian River, in that, we talk about California kissed, but I think there's no better expression of that than in Sonoma and in Russian River. So
Yeah.
California kissed, but even for Chardonnay haters, the people that are like, I don't really love Chardonnay, I
My
still
sister.
think
Yes.
this is
Yes.
exactly. I still think this is a wine that, like, you can get behind because it has
Yeah.
so much of that saline minerality,
Yeah.
citrus, like you said, Meyer
Yeah. The
lemon,
vibrance.
so
Yeah.
if exactly. So even if you are someone that generally gravitates towards the Sauvignon Blancs, the Pinot Grigios, the things that generally lead with more citrus, I think this is probably, this is a great step in the right direction if you want to
Yeah.
increase in weight and texture and broadness. It gives you all the flavors that you sometimes like about those other two grapes, just with, the more of a broad appeal with Chardonnay. So I just think this
And
is
this is
lovely.
like
And they've,
so food friendly because it's like balancing between those two places, right? Like I opened this
yes.
up and was like, okay, like now I'm actually going out to dinner tonight, but I was like, I kind of want to cook at home in order to pour
Don't you
this.
have some cheese in your fridge, Aida, right now?
I may have just a few cheeses for
I
next
mean,
week
I'm just
cheese
saying.
in the
That's what I'm
episode, but
saying. I feel like you should dig in a little early, grab yourself some brie, grab a little like preserve. It would be delicious. Chardonnay and cheese is one of my favorite things in life. The
yes,
Raymond 2018, I mean, just an astounding, astounding vintage in Napa Valley that we're all just over the moon about. To me, this is like, it's saying Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. These grapes are coming from a few different places, but it still has that, like, that sort of Rutherford softness, this like
Yeah.
pulsiness.
Yeah.
People talk about the Rutherford dust, which I think, in some ways is in some ways it's not. But to me, it's just, there's such a softness and a robustness about this wine, but it also has like great minerality. So I love, as we are entering spring and summer, barbecue season, when we start
Yeah.
getting steaks in the grill, ribs in the grill, things like that, this is such a great wine for that. And of course, knowing that, they're doing all the right things in terms of farming. And then the Daou. I mean, if you want over the top, in your face, big and bold. I mean, this is like the definition of bold, right? This is
Yeah.
like your powerhouse wine. I hate to say like Father's Day is coming up, but I always associate
Oh
this
yeah.
wine with like
With
all the dads out
yes,
there that
I
that
agree.
will
I
always ask
agree.
me for this.
I
I don't like
agree.
to stereotype like that, but I have to tell you, like, of the people that I've talked to, it's always dads that love Dow, and I think they
Yeah.
just totally embrace that. So if you're thinking about, just heavy hitting powerhouse, this is Paso, which we love. Paso is such a great region, not only for quality, but also for value. You're getting some
Yeah.
amazing, amazing wines down there. Um, I've just really been excited about that. And I'm excited about what they do. They do so much great, so much good for their community. They're really, really involved. They want to be involved with all things Paso and then beyond. Just in California, I've heard some amazing stories about how they not only take care of their team members, but the people that buy their wines. So they're very community oriented. So I love that. I think it also speaks to why they've been so successful as a
Yeah.
brand, because they really do care, and you can feel that in what they do. So
I
three
mean, I
delicious
just like
wines
that on
today.
the label. Sorry, I was just going to say I love that on the
No,
white label. It says this wine was shaped by the passion, imagination, and life experiences of George and Daniel Dow, and made to bring you happiness and joy. And it's like, oh, from their family to ours,
I
like there's
know.
just
I
that
love that.
little hug that comes along with the wine.
And isn't that like, that just also feels like part of sustainability, right? Like, just
Yeah,
something that's familial, something that really takes into account, like, there's a person, there are people behind this wine. There's a community that is affected by this wine. So it always does. I love, as much as some people will look at a label like this and be like, well, it doesn't tell me anything about the wine. It actually tells you a lot more than you
yeah,
think it does about the wine by putting that
agreed.
on there. It means that they really care about their people, their community. There's a passion behind what they do. And to me, that speaks volumes about any wine that I'm drinking. We drink wine because it's not only delicious, but generally there's a great story, and it tells that throughout, with the liquid in your glass. So
Hmm.
well done.
Yeah, yeah. No, very well put. Very well put.
Well, Aida, we have one more week left. Where should
Yeah,
we go next?
that's it.
We've learned
That's
so
it.
much. We've covered so much.
I have certainly learned a lot. I will say my takeaway from this week, it's probably that I feel like I talk a lot when on the consumer side, but I still feel like I
Mm,
could do it more when it comes to
mm,
everything. So that's kind of like my little Earth Day pledge to myself, is to dive a little deeper. And to your point, I think it's really fun when you get to know the actual people behind the wine, behind the winery, behind all of it, right? The people behind the scenes, pull back the curtain. But
yeah.
next week, we're bringing together another very sustainable part of California's agriculture with wine. So we're going to bring
Yes.
cheese and wine together, because we haven't really talked wine and cheese since last fall when we did a more fall oriented one. So now we will do a more spring oriented one. And the wines we have coming up, like Amanda said, are not only beautiful wines, but also very recognizable wines. So you might be surprised by wines that you're like on your short list of faves are being super sustainable. So, you'll have to come and join us to see which ones they are.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, like, along the lines of your takeaway, one of the things that just dawned on me earlier this week, I was having a conversation with a winemaker, and he said something that I didn't know, and it was brand new information to me, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I remembered how much I love that I don't know things in the wine
Yeah.
world, and I want to just, if there's anything that I can leave you all with, it's that throughout the course of this journey over the past few weeks. Like you and I went into this with, we knew what sustainability was. We knew, to some degree organic and biodynamic, but we didn't know the inner workings of it. And so,
Yeah.
we allowed ourselves to be curious, to ask questions, to, be vulnerable to some degree. And we, at least for me, I hope that you have the, the confidence to say, I don't know, but I want to know more, and to
Yeah.
embrace that curiosity, because that really is the best part about wine and this whole process. So, look for these things, look for these certifications, dive deeper, find the words, but enjoy the journey. It's
Yeah.
such a great time to learn about what people are doing and how it's affecting our lives and our communities. So, with that, I will say I'll see you next week. Happy Earth Day. Always a pleasure to see you, and enjoy your wines today.
Yeah, you too. And if you all need to find if those wines that you have on the dock today are sustainable, just a reminder to go to californiasustainablewine.com and use that find feature we showed you earlier. And, let us know what you're sipping. Leave it here in the Facebook
Yep.
comments. Hit us up over on Instagram at California Wines or on our personal Instagrams. And yeah, I'm going to go dive into these further, and I'll see you next week, Amanda. Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. Good to see you.
Likewise.
Bye.